This is the Friday Night Fever Afterburn, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning.
Welcome to Friday Night Fever Afterburn, playoff edition. Week 12 of the season is in the books. We had 6 teams eliminated this week, 3 advance. We're going to go ahead and hop right into those scores. Take us away, Kaleigh.
Well, starting off with our game of the week, it's a Walton County rivalry. Walton gets that win 63-35. Well, then we're going to head over to Jackson County. Steeds picks up the win 46-22. Hopping over to Washington County, Chipley picks up the win 42-0. And Weewa on the road at Acela Christian, they lose 27-6.
Then over in Tallahassee, Mariana on the road at Florida High. They're going to lose that one 41-17. And this game last night, Mosley on the road at Buchholz. That is a very one-sided affair as the top-ranked team in Class 4 Suburban wins 59-0 over Mosley. We had 4 teams on a bye this week. We have a 1-seed Bozeman, 2-seed Holmes County, and Region 1 of Class 1R, and then the 1-seed Bluntstown and 2-seed Port St. Joe in the Region 2 of Class 1R. We'll get to all the matchups in just a little bit. We're going to dive right in to the game of the week. I do want to see a lot of support in the comments tonight because I know especially those schools that are not playing this week. Just show us that you're here, keeping an eye on those matchups for next week and who you're going to play. We want to hear all that support down in the comments tonight. But go ahead and take us away with the game of the week, Kaleigh.
Yeah, well, Sam, you went to this one in the regular season, actually, and, we know it was a competitive one, obviously double overtime. It remained pretty competitive in the first half, a little back and forth. Walton kind of driving a little bit harder than South Walton, kind of gaining control. Wells Bettenhausen a lot more comfortable meeting his former team for the second time this season in his new home territory than traveling to the Hawks Nest earlier in the season. But yeah, Walton looked really good. South Walton battling back. They were picking up where they could get things out of Walton. A lot of punts in the beginning, but the offense is really just blast off there. Bettenhausen gets comfortable. A lot of weapons on this Walton team, offensively and defensively. Here's a defense play right here. Juwan Campbell just getting the ball out. Braves will recover it. So a lot of good plays for the Braves that set them up very well. Let the offense take over. 2 one-play scores from the Braves as well. So they were cruising, they were feeling it, they were excited, and we saw them cruise away in the second half as well, picking up a 63-35 victory over the Seahawks.
Right, and this is a matchup where obviously, you see it close in the first half. It's neck and neck all the way through, back and forth. And I'm not going to lie, for a little bit when I'm seeing, the Walton score and I'm looking over and I'm checking out other scores from around the area and I'm seeing Pensacola run away with their game, I'm like, man, if Walton doesn't pull away in this one, I might be a little nervous going to the next week, but those 63 points kind of proved, okay, they're the 1 seed. They're the 1 seed for a reason. South Walton has a great ball club. Yeah. They had a great team this year, but there's a reason that they are the top-ranked team.
And I mean, like we always talk about, obviously the playoffs are different as well, but when you face a team that's not too far down the road, you travel 30, 40 minutes south, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of extra pressure on that, and South Walton obviously felt that to bring it. A couple of mistakes from both teams, a lot of dropped passes, a lot of dropped interceptions from both sides of the ball, but obviously Walton was able to capitalize on that a little bit more. I know a lot of turnovers in the second half as well, a lot of interceptions, fumbles, turnovers on downs, so really back and forth battle, and then, like you said, the Braves really took it away towards the end.
Right, and we knew that South Walton coming into this matchup was not just going to lay down and fall. They, like you said, they took this game to double overtime earlier this season. They felt like if there's one team in this bracket that we can beat, maybe other than a Mariana or maybe one of the lower seeds, this is the game we feel like we can win. It's a county rivalry. We know the teams. We know the quarterback. He played for us last year, packed out.
Didn't have to travel far. That always helps as well.
Right, so, I mean, it really was a solid season for South Walton, but this is just one of those years where they are outmatched, and I know the Braves fans, they've been hanging with them all year long and excited for this 10-0 stretch. They are now 11-0, and I see those Braves fans down in the comments as the Walton Braves improve to 11-0. They advance. We'll talk more about the matchups, but they are going to play Pensacola Catholic in the next round, hosting that matchup. Heading up to Jackson County, another rivalry that is an in-county rivalry going on tonight. It was Sneed's hosting Cottondale. This one, another game where somewhat, close-ish. I know that Sneed's jumps out on top by 3 scores, and you're like, oh, man, this is going to get ugly quick. Jason Patterson doing his thing as always. But then, Cottondale gets a couple scores. This is a team that averages 46 points per game. That is the highest mark in the state of Florida. Cottondale averages 46 points per game, and Sneed's held them to 22. And you see that front 7 of Sneed's, they are the real deal. I mean, I talked to Coach Thomas this week, and he talked about how he's made those adjustments to pull over some of his top offensive players over to the defensive side of the ball. That front line is basically impenetrable. And then you got, your Michael linebacker is Jason Patterson. You got Curtis Baker out there playing linebacker. So it is just a dangerous group on the defensive side of the ball that obviously can score some points. They put up 43 tonight. And earlier this season, their game on week 1 of the year ended up being a 98-point overall between the two teams. It was, 64 to 34, I believe, was the final score in their first meeting. So the defense on Sneed's part obviously tightening up a bit, but this is a big win for the Sneed's Pirates. What did you see? I mean, obviously, Cameron Odom, Jock Garrett, those guys can score points to lock them down to 22 tonight. What did you see from the Sneed's Pirates?
Well, I mean, this is a matchup that I saw week 1. It was a Thursday night match, and it was back and forth in the first half between these two, and then, Sneed's trailed away with it in the second half. But I think the biggest thing is we've talked about this Sneed's defense a lot. It's something I talked to Coach Thomas about before the season, previewing this team, and he said last year we had a state-level offense, but the defense had a lot of holes. Well, throughout the season, we saw some of those holes form in maybe both sides of the ball, but like you talked about, they moved some players around, put some key offensive players on the defensive side of the ball as well, and it's clearly paid off. I mean, you see it here. Cottondale isn't an easy team to hold to a lot of points. They have a lot of weapons, especially with Odom and Garrett. We've talked about that dynamic doing what they're able to do. But, I mean, it takes one to know one. Sneed's has that high-powered offense, and they just knew how to, cut one down. So, big win for Sneed's. That's exactly what they wanted. And, a tough loss for Cottondale. I know that was an opponent that they wanted to face in the first round of the playoffs.
Right, and I mentioned, last week or 2 weeks ago, I said if there's one team in Region 1 that I don't want to face, it's Shipley. If there's one team in Region 2 I don't want to face, it's Sneed's. They're just getting hot at the right time, and it's the same thing that you see in any sport, whether it's basketball in March Madness or playoff football, wild card team. Whoever is playing their best football at the end of the year is the teams that are going to go on those long runs, and Sneed's is playing fantastic football. I see a lot of support down here in the comments for the Braves of Walton. I see some Chipley fans in here, and then of course Coach Nichols taking a little bit of a scouting this week as his Bluntstown Tigers will take on those super speedy Sneed's Pirates next week. But before we get into all of those next week's matchups, we are going to talk about that Washington County ball game up in Chipley tonight. We see some Chipley Tiger comments down in here. That's right. I see Coach Buchanan's wife, Brittany, down in the comments cheering on those Tigers. Let's get in to talk about the Chipley Tigers. This one was a game where we knew coming in, probably going to be somewhat one-sided. Vernon going to need somewhat of a miracle here to pull this one out. We've mentioned, in 2018, that was the last time that they met in the playoffs. Vernon won 40-0. A lot has changed in 5 years. 82 points has changed in 5 years. So this Chipley Tigers team just clearly outmatching them. Size, age, speed, athleticism, everything across the board. So, and again, it's nothing against Vernon. They're a young team that was 1-17 over the last 2 years. So this is a huge progress step for Vernon to be where they are, to get in the playoffs in the first place. I know Coach Tillman said earlier this week, when I got to Vernon, I told people, we want to be in the playoffs this year. And they looked at me like I was crazy. So for these Yellow Jackets to be in the playoffs at all, that's just absolutely phenomenal. But again, this was just not really, we never really saw this happening in the sense of, Vernon is going to come in and upset Chipley on the road. A lot of athletes over there, Kyler Bryant, Tayshawn Sims. What do you kind of see from these Chipley Tigers as they cruise through that opening week matchup?
Well, just going back to what you said about Vernon real quick, when I talked to Coach Tillman and some of the guys out there before the season started, they just wanted to make the playoffs. They wanted to have an appearance. That was their goal. They set their goal on that, and they did just that. They weren't out there talking about they're going to win a state title this year. That wasn't the expectation. That wasn't the goal there. And so they set it at that, and it's just impressive to see them get that goal. Obviously, you want to go as far as possible. You want to get that playoff win. But for them to just accomplish that goal in that first season, there's a lot of good things happening out there. But you talked about peaking at the right time with Sneeds, and Chipley was one of those teams you mentioned. Chipley is peaking at the right time. I got to witness it last week. Ethan Berry looks in prime position. I mean, he looks so good. That arm, he's comfortable. Fourth down play, he airs one out deep to Tayshawn Sims. So they look good. There's a lot of weapons. I mean, you don't just list off one name when you're going through Chipley highlights. So they have a lot of guys on that team. We know we're going to see them in some other sports throughout the year, but they look good.
Right, and we mentioned basketball earlier in the show and Fever. And I know Coach Kennedy's watching and he's cheering on the football team, but at the same time, he's like,
don't hurt my guys.
Y'all are going to have my guys probably as the basketball season starts. And, Coach Buchanan is like, no way that you're taking them before our, hopefully make a Final Four run. But again, a big night for those Chipley Tigers. They're going to advance to the next round. Just to kind of go over some scores once again. And also, I did see down in the comments, Grace Thornton, obviously a long-time friend of the show, former shooter. She used to love going up to Chipley. I think she left
she's
with
a big
Chipley sweatshirt
fan
at some point before heading off to another station. That is former weekend weather anchor Grace Thornton.
Meteorologist, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, not weather anchor, meteorologist. That's a weather nerd. I don't know. You say hi to her. She's down there in the comments, or was earlier. But Weowahitchka, they fall tonight, so that means Asilla will go on the road to Port St. Joe. Mariana, again, losing. Their season comes to an end. Mosley, their
great season for the Bulldogs.
Exactly. Big season. Amari Clemens, a lot of growth with that team. Some
young team,
guys.
Very young.
They'll be back next year. I will not be surprised one bit if they're right back in the playoffs. Same with Mosley. Very, very young crew that's going to return basically everybody. They're going to lose a couple of secondary players. Obviously, Cameron Keys, that's going to be going to Missouri. But pretty much their entire offensive line. You got Raiden Bruins coming back, Sammy Freitas. You got all the weapons coming back for the most part. We lose a couple of good receivers, but Mosley going to be very, very good next year. They'll be right back.
I mean, you talked about one of those players, Sammy Freitas. We saw him get very comfortable with that team this season, too, especially in that Niceville game. He really took command in that. So it's going to be good to see him in his senior year, what he's able to do with that team. So I know there's a lot of potential next year for the Dolphins.
Right, and I'm already seeing some, some projections down in here. I'm seeing some bold ones of Chipley by 10 next week at Bonifay. I'm asking for some predictions. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and dive into those next week's matchups. We're going to start in Region 1. That's going to be a Northview team that was excellent last year. Excellent. I believe state runners-up this past year. They've clearly lost a lot of that veteran leadership and skill, but they're going to be the 4 seed. They rolled past Jay tonight. They're going to go to Bozeman. Bozeman coming off that bye. And then, like we saw down in the comments, Chipley, the 3 seed, looking for revenge. They're going to be in Bonifay for the second time this year. Holmes County won the last one. What do you kind of see from this Region 1 matchup?
I just want to say there have been so many good rematches or matchups in the playoffs so far, and I think that's just been the most exciting part. We saw all of those county rivalries this week, and now you get to see the cross-county one with Holmes County Chipley. That was potentially one that we were really looking at for Game of the Week. Went the other way with another team, and so now it's kind of giving that opportunity for a potential again. So it's exciting to see these matchups that, we love to see in the regular season come in the playoffs when it's, do or die.
Right. And, there is a lot of good matchups here. These ones, obviously the Chipley Holmes County is going to be up there as a front runner for Game of the Week. We have not officially decided. No. That is one we're leaning towards as Game of the Week. But also, as we head into Region 2, you'll see why there's also another Game of the Week candidate. It's Sneeds in Bluntstown. We saw at the beginning of the year will likely be right back in the mix for Sneeds in Bluntstown. We saw in the region finals last year. This was a phenomenal, 2 phenomenal teams. A lot of mixing it up in that game. A lot of, friends and bad blood. A lot of, people that know each other very, very well in those two communities. So we're going to have a Sneads and Blountstown matchup. That is the 4-seed Sneads and the 1-seed Blountstown. That'll be at Bulls Field. And then Osceola Christian, the 3-seed, at 2-seed Port St. Joe.
And I'm just going to take a wild guess that the Sneads-Blountstown game isn't going to look like it did in the regular season. I just don't expect a 7-0 game out of those two at this time in the season.
Right, and that was one thing I was talking to Coach Thomas about, and Coach Jordan, in the sense of, for us, we hate it. We're putting these highlights on and we're like, where's the scoring? What's going on? And, for viewers that are wanting to watch the high-flying plays and the scores and the touchdowns, when it's 7-0, but the coaches are like, that is the best game that we can imagine. That means that our team is doing everything right on the defensive side of the ball. We're limiting penalties. Sometimes a 7-0 can make things, mean there's turnovers in the mix. But, again, that is going to be a fun one. I don't think I don't think either team will be shut out next week.
Both defenses look good right now, but I think these offenses are also figuring it out. And, Blountstown's a little well rested. I think they'll be ready to get into it. And we see the Sneads that we know starting to show again.
Right. And again, St. Joe, they've had a week off of rest. Devin Catino and that crew, they're going to be ready. I know Coach Jones was up in Monticello scouting out that game tonight, trying to see, all right, am I going to face Wewa Hitchcock? I'm going to face Osceola. Of course, it is Osceola. They are now 9-1 on the year. So, we may have taken a couple jabs at their strength of schedule earlier this year. But any team that's 9-1, I mean, you're not a bad ball club by any means. No. And clearly to be a playoff level, Wewa Hitchcock pretty handily tonight by 3 scores. I think St. Joe's going to have their hands full, but that is going to be a rowdy environment next week. Taking a look at some of the comments, I see some more support for the Walton Braves. I see Coach Kennedy down here showing his love for those Tigers. I see, again, play of the week, Tayshawn Sims. Do we have that play of the week? We are going to pull that up since it was mentioned down here. That is the Alabama State commit commit. He'll be a signee by the end of this upcoming school year. But Tayshawn Sims, dual sport athlete, making this grab tonight. I know we were talking about it earlier, but what do you kind of see from that Ethan Berry, Tayshawn Sims duo?
It's something that every game I've been to for the Chipley Tigers, I've seen it. So it's consistent. He's continually making these big grabs, always in or near the end zone. So he has been a key player for the Tigers this season. That duo is very dynamic, and he doesn't miss the end zone. He finds his way into the end zone pretty much every matchup.
And he's not the only one. They got lots of athletes over there. Kyler Bryant's obviously been emerging.
Kibo DeCree looked good tonight.
I already mentioned Coach Kennedy's waiting for them to get to the basketball court, but they got a lot of football left to play. At least they hope, and Coach Buchanan and that crew hopes. But just a phenomenal athletes over there in Chipley. I see Coach Nichols. Port St. Joe had a good path. That is right. They did have a good path.
They're happy.
A bye, and then Wewa and Osceola. They couldn't have asked for a better path over there. But again, one more matchup, and this one is a huge matchup.
Yeah.
I cannot even begin to explain how big of a matchup this one is over there with 4-seed Pensacola Catholic versus 1-seed Walton, which could easily be flip-flopped. Easily flip-flopped. You were just taking a look at the final score of those games last time at 23-21. Walton came from behind. They were down in the game in the regular season. That one ended up clinching the district championship. I think we said it was the first time that Walton had beat Pensacola Catholic since 2004.
Yeah,
I think
it was a long time.
Since 2004. So clearly Pensacola Catholic has had the edge in the past. This year, Walton has certainly had that edge. 11-0 right now.
They'll be back at home, which helps.
Back home in Defuniak Springs. What do you see from this matchup as they head back to Defuniak Springs? Also, Pensacola Catholic absolutely crushing Swanee, the team that was a Final Four team last year. Crushing Swanee tonight.
It's hard to say because I know that there is so much talent on this team, and the bond this team has this season, it's really, really special. There's some really special things happening up there, and they're confident. I mean, they know what they need to do. They've come down to so many close games this season, and they've come out on top in every single one. So there's just something different about this team. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to jinx anything, but, Coach White is very confident in his team. They know what to do when it gets down to the wire like that, and they have all the confidence. If they need to go for a 2-point conversion to either win or lose it, they'll do it, and they have the perfect play call to get it done. So, hopefully they can pull away, get a little bit more of a comfortable lead this coming week than last time. But, the Braves are confident. I'm confident in the Braves. They've constantly been fun to watch all season, so you just got to hope for the best.
Coach Nichols, former Brave down there, rooting on, when your Bluntstown team is not facing Walton, it's easy to root for those Walton Braves. We've gone through all the matchups tonight. The only question, I believe, for this upcoming week is our game of the week. What do you think? Do we want to do a poll? What do you think, Spencer? Should we do a poll this week between Sneads and Bluntstown, Holmes County and Chipley? Leave it up to fate?
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it up to fate.
And we won't delete the post this time.
We will not delete any post. There will be no foul play on anybody's
I don't know how to use technology. I'm sorry.
But yes, we will have it between Chipley and Holmes County. We'll have it between Sneads and Bluntstown. Those will be the two options. We'll post it on social media. It might be on Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
Anywhere else that it would be besides Twitter and Facebook, Spencer? Nope, Twitter and Facebook. So be on the lookout for that. We'll have that this week. We'll let you decide where our game of the week is going to be. That's going to do it for us tonight on week 12, the opening week of the playoffs. We'll be back next week. That'll probably be our last fever, and then we'll try to continue doing Afterburn all the way through the playoffs until we don't have any teams left. But if you want to watch all the highlights from those games tonight, head on over to mypanhandle.com. We'll have them posted shortly. Anything else before we go, Kaleigh?
It was a fun week. Ready for another.
Ready for one more.
But not ready for it to end.
We'll have the highlights of 5 games next week, so a little bit more action to discuss. That will do it for us tonight. We will see you next week on Week 13.